The Cry of the Revolution Balintawak or Pugad Lawin. The Cry of Pugad Lawin, Tagalog, Sigaw ng Pugad Lawin, Spanish, Grito de Pugad Lawin was the beginning of the Philippine revolutions against the Spanish Empire. In late August 1896, members of the Katipunan led by Andres Bonifacio revolted somewhere around Caloocan, which included parts of the present-day Quezon City. Originally, the term cry referred to the first clash between the Katipuneros and the civil guards or Guardia Civil. The cry could also refer to the tearing up of community tax certificates or cedulus personalis, and in defiance of their allegiance to Spain. The inscriptions of Viva la Independencia Filipina can also be referred as term for the cry. This was literally accompanied by patriotic shouts.
Among those who attended, I remember were Bonifacio, Emilio Jacinto, Aguido del Rosario, Tomas Remeo, Brescio Pantas, Teodoro Plata, Pio Valenzuela, Enrique Pacheco, and Francisco Crayon. They were all leaders of the Katipunan and composed the board of directors of the organization. Delegates from Bulacan, Cabanatuan, Cavite, and Morong were also present. At about 9 o'clock in the morning of August 26, the meeting was opened with Andres Bonifacio presiding and Emilio Jacinto acting as secretary. The purpose was to discuss when the uprising was to take place. Teodoro Plata, Brescio Pantas, and Pio Valenzuela were all opposed to starting the revolution too early. Andres Bonifacio, sensing that he would lose the discussion then, left the session hall and talked to the people who were waiting outside for the result of the meeting of the leaders. Because accounts of the event vary, the exact date and place of the event is unknown. From 1908 until 1963, the event was thought to have occurred on August 26 in Balintawak. In 1963, the Philippine government declared August 23 to be the date of the event in Quezon City. On August 26, a big meeting was held in Balintawak at the house of Apolonio Samson, then cabeza of that barrio of Caloocan.
He told the people that the leaders were arguing against starting the revolution early, and appealed to them in a fiery speech in which he said, "You remember the fate of our countrymen who were shot in Bagumbayan. Should we return now to the towns? The Spaniards will only shoot us. Our organization has been discovered and we are all marked men. If we don't start the uprising, the Spaniards will get us anyway. What then, do you say? Revolt," the people shouted as one. Bonifacio then asked the people to give a pledge that they were to revolt. He told them that the sign of slavery of the Filipinos were the cedula tax charged each citizen. "If it is true that you are ready to revolt, I want to see you destroy your cedulas. It will be a sign that all of us have declared our severance from the Spaniards." The cry of Balintawak occurred on August 26, 1896. The cry, defined as the turning point when the Filipinos finally refused Spanish colonial dominion. Then, the people as one man pulled out their cedulas and tore them into pieces. It was the beginning of formal declaration of the separation from Spanish rule. Long live the Republic! Cry of the people.
An article from the Sunday Tribune magazine on August 21, 1932, featured the statements of the eyewitness account by Katipunan General Guillermo Masangkay. A Katipunero speaks. Masangkay recounts the cry of Balintawak, stating that on August 26, 1896, a big meeting was held in Balintawak at the house of Apolonio Samson, then the cabeza of the barrio of Caloocan. At about 9 o'clock in the morning, on August 26, the meeting was opened with Andres Bonifacio presiding and Emilio Jacinto acting as secretary. In August 1896, after the Katipunan was discovered, Masangkay joined Bonifacio, Emilio Jacinto, and others in the clandestine meeting held on 26 of that month at Apolonio Samson's house in Caloocan. Initially, the leaders of the movement quarreled over strategy and tactics, and many of its members questioned the wisdom of an open rebellion due to the lack of arms and logistical support. However, after Bonifacio's intense and convincing speech, everyone destroyed the cedulas to symbolize their defense towards Spain and together raised the cry of revolt. In 1936, Pio Valenzuela along with Brescio Pantas and Enrique Pacheco said in English translation, The first cry of the revolution did not happen in Balintawak, where the monument is, but in place called Pugadlawin. In 1940, a research team on forerunner of the National Historical Institution, or the NHI, which included Valenzuela, identified the location as part of Sitio Gulod, Banlat, Caloocan City. In 1964, the NHI described this location as the house of Tandang Sora. Translate the first cry of liberation was not happen in Balintawak, where it taking place, but in the locality which is known as Pugadlawin.
The first place of refuge of Andres Bonifacio, Emilio Jacinto, Procopio, Bonifacio, Teodoro Plata, Aguedo del Rosario, and myself was Balintawak. The first five arriving there on August 19 and I on August 20, 1896. The first place where some 500 members of the Katipunan met on August 22, 1896 was the house and yard of Apolonio Samson at Kangkong. Aside from the persons mentioned above, among those who were there were Bricio Pantas, Alejandro Santiago, Ramon Bernardo, Apolonio Samson, and others. Here, views were only exchanged and no resolution was debated or adopted. It was at Pugadlawin, the house, storehouse, and yard of Juan Ramos, son of Melchora Aquino, where over 1,000 members of the Katipunan met and carried out considerable debate and discussion on August 23, 1896. The discussion was on whether or not the revolution against the Spanish government should be started on August 29, 1896. After the tumultuous meeting, many of those present tore their cedula certificates and shouted, "Long live the Philippines! Long live the Philippines!"
Views were only exchanged and no resolution was debated or adopted. It was at Pugadlawin, the house, storehouse, and the yard of Juan Ramos, son of Melchor Aquino, where over 1,000 members of the Katipunan met and carried out considerable debate and discussion on August 23, 1896. The discussion was on whether or not the revolution against the Spanish government shall be started on August 29, 1896. After the tumultuous meeting, many of those present tore and tear cedula certificate and shouting, "Long live Philippines! Long live Philippines!" Santiago Alvarez regarding to the cry of Balintawak planted specific endeavor as stated. We started our trek to Kangkong at about 11 that night. We walked through the rain over the dark expanses of muddy meadow and fields. Our clothes drenched and our bodies numbed by the cold wind. We bluffed wordlessly. It was nearly 2 in the morning when we reached the house of Brother Apolonio Samson in Kangkong. We crowded into the house to rest and warm ourselves. We were so tired that after hanging our clothes out to dry, we soon fell asleep. The Supremo began assign guards at 5 o'clock. The following morning, Saturday, August 22, 1896, placed a detachment at Balintawak boundary and another at the backyard to the north of the house where we gathered. No less than 300 men assembled at the bidding of the Supremo Andres Bonifacio. Altogether, they carried assorted weapons, bolos, spear, daggers, a dozen small revolvers, and rifle used by its owner, one Lieutenant Manuel, for hunting birds. The Supremos Bonifacio was restless because of fear of sudden attack by the enemy. He was worried over the thought that any of the carriers carrying the letter sent by Emilio Jacinto could have been intercepted and in that eventually the enemy would recently know their whereabouts and attack them on the sail.
He decided that it was better to move to a site called Bahay Toro. At 10 o'clock that Sunday morning, 23rd August 1896, we arrived at Bahay Toro. Our member had grown to more than 500, and the house, yard, and warehouse of Cabezang Melchora was getting crowded with us Katipuneros. The generous hospitality of Cabezang Melchora was no less than that of Apolonio Samson. Like him, she also opened granary and had plenty of rice pounded and animals slaughtered to feed us. The following day, Monday, 24th August, more Katipuneros came and increased our number to more than 1,000. The Supremo called a meeting at 10 o'clock that morning inside Cabezang Melchora's barn. Flanking him both sides at the head of the table were Dr. Pio Valenzuela, Emilio Jacinto, Bricio Pantas, Enrique Pacheco, Ramon Bernardo, Pantaleon Torres, Francisco Carrion, Vicente Fernandez, Teodoro Plata, and others. We were so crowded that some stood outside the barn. The following matters were approved at the meeting. An uprising to defend the people's freedom was to be started at midnight of Saturday, 29th August, 1896. To be on a state of alert so that the Katipunan forces could strike should the situation arise where the enemy was at a disadvantage. Thus, the uprising could be started earlier than the agreed time of midnight of 29th August 1896 should be a favorable opportunity arise at the date. Everyone should steel himself and be resolute in the struggle that was imminent, and the immediate objective was the capture of Manila. After the adjournment of the meeting at 12 noon, there were tumultuous shouts of "Long live the sons of the people."